Good morning. As we are um, kind of feels like back in the saddle, had a wonderful family reunion last week about an hour south of St. Louis, Missouri, about 400 miles from home. About 60 miles before we arrived, we were going on the interstate and I was driving and hit something on the highway. I looked in the rearview mirror and it looked like a windshield squeegee, maybe with from a truck, because it had a long handle. I didn't think much of it, didn't change the way the car was rolling down the highway at all. Well, the next day, would have been Tuesday, I noticed that the tire pressure um, indicator on the dashboard said we only had 25 pounds of pressure, or 26 pounds of pressure in that tire, which is considerably lower than the 35 pounds it's supposed to have. About an hour later, it had 24 pounds. And I thought, this is heading the wrong direction. We found a tire shop there in town. They took it in, looked it over, and the attendant named Aiden came out and he said, you can come back and look at this, but there's a big bulge in the sidewall of your tire, and we can't fix it. Do you want to come out and look at it? And I said, no, I don't need to come out and look at it. You're the one that needs to sleep at night. And that's the idea that the Apostle Paul is addressing to the Christians in Rome, here in Romans 13:5. He says, therefore it is necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience sake. He says the obvious punishment is given to the authorities so that they can render God's wrath to evildoers. Well, if you're not a criminal, if you're not breaking the law, then you don't need to be afraid of God's wrath through the authorities. Another benefit is you have a clean conscience. You can lay your head down at night and you don't have to worry about getting caught. You don't have to worry about trying to make excuses or come up with some kind of an alibi to cover your tracks. You don't need to do any of that. If you don't break the law, you can have a clear conscience. And so these are two very good reasons to be in subjection to the authorities that God has placed over you. So that's our thought for this Monday. As we move into this week, there may be laws and rules that you don't like. However, God says for two reasons you should subject yourself to these authorities. One, God has given them the position, the role of administering his punishment upon evildoers. That's number one. Number two is if you don't cross the line, if you don't break the law, if you don't commit crimes, then your conscience is clear. These are two good reasons. Avoid punishment and have a clear conscience. They're good reasons. And the Christian is the one who is the best citizen in whatever country. And don't try to use the argument, well, the laws are unfair, because Paul wrote this to the church living in Rome under the Roman Empire. Now, the Roman Empire was set up very, very well, lasted hundreds of years until they began, that's a different story altogether. I'm just very concerned about the United States of America following the same pattern of decline that the Roman Empire experienced. But the church in the Roman Empire demonstrated such an extraordinary, supernatural kind of love, kind of joy, kind of peace, such an extraordinary, supernatural kind of hospitality and forgiveness and gentleness and kindness that the Romans, who were often suffering and now being ministered to by the Christians, these Romans were persuaded that the Lord of the Christians was such a good Lord. And the joy and the confidence these Christians had, because the Lord is also the Savior. And thousands upon thousands of Romans were converted to Christ, and they became Christ followers because the Christians lived what some of us would say an unreasonable life. They obeyed the laws. They submitted to the authorities. They cared for their neighbors. They loved their God. So today that's our pattern. Submit to the authorities that are over you, whether it's at work, in your neighborhood, in your state, country. Submit to those authorities and let the love of Christ shine through you with your attitude and your actions. God bless you. He loves you, and we love you.